Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce, well, I already introduced them actually, but we're going to talk a little bit for a short, brief time about the role the African diaspora play in driving economic growth on the African continent. I talk about this back at home a lot. And I'm just eager to hear from the panelists here what their thoughts are. Number one, I'd just like to start off by asking, when we talk about these roles, we know the African Union has declared the diaspora as the sixth region. But we still have people within our local communities, Chicago, Detroit, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. I talk to folks all over the country. They still a little apprehensive about doing business in Africa. Why should I do anything in Africa? I'm from Alabama, I'm from Mississippi. How do we change that narrative? And I'm going to start with Dr. Helen.
Okay. Do I introduce myself?
You can if you want.
Okay, everyone. My name is Dr. Obianuju Helen Okoye. You can call me Uju, Helen. It don't matter as long as you're cutting the check. I'm a public health physician. I'm a healthcare and business advisor. I work with young entrepreneurs starting out and female entrepreneurs. The passion of mine to help with business development and expansion, both here and on the continent. I have a strong passion for Africa. I grew up across West Africa, part of the diaspora, and I've worked in international development in Africa. My father was transportation infrastructure expert for Africa, a lot of policies seen in transportation in Africa. He helped develop and write while working for the African Development Bank, and I helped him with his work. So I've spent quite a number of time just in terms of trying to understand Africa's problem and Africa's future and trying to be a part of it. In terms of what you just asked, I think part of the problem is trust and ignorance, and it's up to us to, change the narrative. We're here. I wouldn't say we're building a bridge. The bridge is already built. Now, the two key questions that we need to ask is, how do we get people onto the bridge, and once they get on the bridge, how do we get them across the bridge? Right? So it all comes down to access. And I'm not talking about just being gatekeepers. I'm talking about handing people keys. You get a key, you get a key, you get a key. We all get keys and we pass it on. So that's really what we need to do is to, and in terms of trust, we have established networks here. Just being a part of the diaspora, we are like intermediaries. We're like ambassadors, but even more than that, we are like dual citizens, both symbolically and even just in general. So we have both. We have one foot here and the other foot on the continent in different African countries. So it's up to us to try to, to educate. We sow the seed when we share the knowledge, we give the information. So a lot of people don't know what they have access to. Yesterday, Exim Bank was telling us all this stuff, and we were all blown away, right? This is stuff that we need to share with other people. It's not just, it's not about competition, right? So we're working together as a collaborative, so we should see it as that. It's not time to hoard information. So that's what we need to do, and we need to connect our networks together and just share ideas and help push each other forward.
All right, Mr. Kola.
Hi, my name is Kola. My friends call me the OG hustler because I love to do multiple things, so I wear many hats. In terms of diaspora, how do we get them involved? The first question I ask anybody is, what's in it for me? Do we ask that question when we want to talk to people? What's in it for them? What are they going to gain from it? We have to pitch that to them, let them understand the benefits of it. If they don't understand the benefits, they're not going to buy it. It's basic sales. You want to sell something to somebody, you have to always think of what's in it for them. So if we want to bridge, we want to go over the bridge to get them down there, to invest, to get involved in things, we have to tell them what they stand to gain. One, if we're talking about diaspora, we're talking about Africans of the first generation, people like me who came maybe a few decades ago, or we're talking about the people that are African Americans that have been here. They're all, each side are diasporans. But we also have to bring about a uniformity in thought, which is conversations. How do we bring about the relationship? We're establishing the relationships. Because when we build a relationship where we don't see a difference of, oh, I'm African American or I'm Nigerian American or whatever, those fancy titles we call ourselves, we see ourselves as brothers and sisters with one home continent that we want to go back to go and walk in, then things become much easier. Communications is much better. Because I was in my barber shop 3 or 4 days ago and I told them the best place to have conversation for men, barber shop. Because you can talk about anything under the sun and get away with it. And I was the only African in the barbershop. But the way we related there is like a brotherhood. And when we continue to build on that, then it becomes much easier to say, hey, some of them actually want to go with me back to Nigeria. These are African American men. But because of the relationship I've built with them, now they see that place as home. They want to now go and explore home. So again, what's in it for them? They're being welcomed back home, being a part of home. Home for all of us, not for me because I'm a Nigerian it's home for all of us. If you have any speck of melanin on your skin, that's your home. Let's go build it. Let's go tap into it. Not only build it, make some money in the process too. Ms. Preacher.
I feel like you was looking at my notes. So I'm Aprisha Faulkner, and I run Global Strategists Association, and we strive to increase global engagement among the African diaspora, and as Kola said, for all of us. And so we don't just identify first and second gen. We say if you have melanin, if your ancestry is derived from Africa, we want to make sure you are in this space, you are in this room, and rooms like it where policy happens, whether that's at the UN or the IMF or the regional organizations. You have a part in what happens on your continent, and you should have a say, and your skill set should be leveraged for that region. What can the African diaspora do? I think Kola and Uju actually said the perfect thing. We have to be able to educate and commune with each other. And so what I always encourage first, second gen folks to do, along with Afro-Latinos, who we work with a lot, and people who identify as Black Americans, is see each other as part of the diaspora. We have to really begin to deal with our own prejudices and biases. Those of us that come in recently, those of that lived here for 50 to 90 years, where we don't even communicate. I personally have friends who have never heard of the area, the agreement, like they don't know what that is. And so we have to do a better job of having the conversations with each other, not lecturing each other about what you should be doing and what you're not doing, and all of the challenges that we face moving forward in unity. But hey, I want to let you know that this is happening. You have a certain skill set. We may need you. What does that look like, you joining me on a trip, on an exchange? You should come back. And so I think the invitation, one, I love when President Addo, he was here a couple of months ago from Ghana, and he made the case in front of a room full of Black Americans. This is your home. He appealed, bring your skill set. And I think more of that has to happen, and we have to have first and second gen folks actually do that. Come with me so that we all can contribute to this new area and benefit in new ways.
Well, that is very powerful, and everyone here has made some very powerful statements. There is another twist to this, though, I would like to just bring out to everyone's attention. Oftentimes, you're right, we need to have a conversation in terms of education, but oftentimes we also look to our leaders, our policymakers, our elected officials. Sometimes they don't get what's going on. I go to the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference every year, and even though Congresswoman Karen Bass she dedicated that Friday to the Africa Brain Trust, we still, outside of that, there's almost non-existent discussion on on U.S.-Africa relations as it pertains to the diaspora. We're talking about lawmakers that other nations respect, and yet we have the largest Black caucus on Capitol Hill. We have Black caucuses in our local state governments, and yet and very little dialogue is happens outside of a Karen Bass or a Frederica Wilson or people like that. So how do we, at this level, at a business summit like this, how do we start addressing this to our policymakers strategically and moving that process forward? I'm going to go this way.
So I think we're in the great room for that because dollars make sense to people when ideology does not. Money makes sense to folks.
Right.
And so business, trade, the idea that your skill set, your business can benefit from ripe communities on the continent makes sense for folks. And I think that for a long time we was talking about giving, 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 and as somebody mentioned Dambisa Moyo's book, now we're saying, hey, business, 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 trade, 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 and I think that that will move the needle forward because we're going in with a different type of conversation. Not only that, we're talking about, we're in the era where social entrepreneurship and the level of businesses that are rising is at a rapid rate, right? We're not rating just on big corporations. There are collaborations that are happening with people in Kenya and people in Chicago connecting. There are people that are connecting with people in Ethiopia, connecting with people in DC. So there are global leaders that we don't know about that are developing apps, that are developing medical devices, that are moving money, and that are trading right now that we don't know their name. So I think we have to look at social entrepreneurship. One other thing is, I hate to be all feministic, but, Black women are really out here doing our work. In America, we start more businesses than any other demographic, period. And so how many Black women that want to go and want to trade or collaborate? And so I always say there are 2 C's that we need to make sure that we do on the continent: connect and collaborate. There's somebody doing something similar over there, connect with them. Don't just depend on corporations. Your social entrepreneurs, your developers, your IT folks, those people also have resources to help move the continent, and we just have to invest in them.
Amen.
Well, if you're talking about getting policymakers involved, well, you have to educate them as well. Just because they win elections and have titles doesn't mean they know anything. Actually, I have a disdain for politicians. Many of them are my friends. Ironically, honestly, I have a bunch of them that are friends. But the thing doesn't, just because they're there, we still have to do our job of educating them, bringing them into the fold, sharing with them what's really going on. Because they have enough in their plates as well that they have to deal with that they may miss these things that's going on in here. So we have to reach out to them. Relationship, the other thing which is political in perspective, and I share this with my friends my brothers who are African American. How often do we sponsor and help these politicians financially? Especially within the Black community. We talk about wanting our fellow people to be running things, but we don't back them. So you have the suburban Caucasians sponsoring them, and we sit back and we issue directives and ask things of them. Let's be honest with ourselves. We have to support them. When you support, when money talks, whether it's your $5 or $500 or Naira or whatever, that you're helping to get them in there, they're prone to listen to you more. You have more influence on how they look at things. So we need to support them to get them to come in and sit down with us. And then we can now have more dialogue about how we want certain things go a certain way. They will listen. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. You want them to listen to you? Show them the money. Support them. Help them. Help them win their elections. Be there for them. Bring them to rooms like this, in this kind of events. Let them come and learn more about these things. Because like I said, just because they have a title doesn't mean they know everything.
Right.
They need to be educated just as much as the next person.
I actually agree. I agree with what's been said. I think also if we let them know how it's going to benefit their community and their constituents, then they're bound to, want to come on board. So if we're telling them, well, look at so-and-so, they have this service in your community, but you know what? They can get access with, especially with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Now, they have access to millions of people, and that money's going to come back to your community. Then we can start, then they'll be eager to want to be part of this movement too as well. So that's something that we need to, again, it comes down to educating and sowing that seed, but not only that, also helping to grow, not just to sow the seed, but you also want to help them grow the plant, because obviously they do have a lot of work, and we're more informed than they are concerning these issues. Also linking them up with politicians and government officials on the other side, because a lot of times people do want to be a part of it, they just don't know how. So we can use our network or leverage on our network to help them out and say, oh, you know what, I know the president of this country, or I know the minister in this country, and he's the one that makes the decisions and the policy, so he'll sort out whatever you need. And, so they're more eager because you've done the groundwork to help them out.
Fantastic. I understand, and I want to piggyback what you're saying. You're right. It's important to understand policymakers on the other side of the Atlantic, in the Caribbean, things in places like that. Also, through my personal journey, we talk about engaging African American businesses. African American businesses, some are interested in doing business in Africa, others are not. We have, Black Chamber of Commerce's, National Black Chamber of Commerce's. They have conferences and things of that nature. There's my understanding, there is a national, I forget the name of it offhand, but it represents Black banks in the United States. And yet we heard yesterday, you mentioned the XMIM Bank, in terms of trying to engage minorities into this track that is almost little to non-existent. So when we talk about, and anybody can jump in this for this question, when we talk about changing the narrative with our African American businesses, whether you're here in Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, how do we change that narrative to help? And I want to say what you said, make sure that they're stakeholders at this. But what strategies can we utilize in this room? What strategies can we utilize to make that possible or make that a reality? Anybody can jump in for this one.
So in Chicago, we just had a good example of this. So in Chicago, we had several Black banks a decade ago, right? Now we only have 2. The last 2 that are left were having very challenging times. They pretty much were going to go out of business, but a Ghanaian family came in. It's called GN Bank, and literally saved them at the last moment. What they did was, when they realized that they were going to purchase the bank, they went around to all of the communities, spoke to the members. They didn't change the name right away. You probably can attest to this. They didn't change the name right away. They went in, they asked who were the playmakers there, who were the community leaders. They went around, I literally saw them everywhere I went on a tour. They did a tour to the Black businesses. We're thinking about buying Illinois Savings Federal. We're interested in, what do you think? What do you need from us? How can we support you? They did that for about a year. After a year, they purchased the bank, right? It might have been a little bit more, but they purchased the bank. They didn't change the names. There was only 2 left. They didn't change the names. They constantly, they're still going in the community. I see them hosting events. I see them hosting business leaders. They're sponsoring the community and the things that they need. I see their name. Probably a little bit after that, they changed the name of the bank. What happened, though? They was very intentional and sensitive to what the community needed. Now, had they went in there right away and changed everything, the community would have felt like they came in and took over. But they got the community leaders involved. They introduced themselves. They had business lunches, business meetings, sat down with the community members, asked how can we support. There was a job fair. We want to hire you all. We want to do this over. We want your input. Because obviously something wasn't right that they were going out of business, right? The last 2 banks in Chicago. And now when you hear their name, people are like, oh, I know them. They're awesome. They're business leaders. But what do they want too? They want to let people know what's happening in Ghana. And now, when people hear their name or think about going to Ghana, they'll think of those two people who came in very intentional but very sensitive to the culture and the community that they came into. So I think that that's one of the ways that we can get Black businesses involved, is looking at the landscape. Don't just throw a blanket over everything and say, okay, this is where we're going to do it, but how do you need us to customize it for you, that we can make sure we're building a relationship that lasts beyond the bank, that goes beyond this, goes into the future.
All right. Anybody?
Well, I'm fully in support of the points that Appreciator said, and to just build further on it. In any relationship that you want to build, you want to spend some time and invest time in it. And in any relationship, you need to learn about each other. If you don't take the time to learn about the people you want to work with, you're probably going to stumble. You may be lucky enough where after some stumbles, you get things going. If we want the Black businesses, the diasporans to come in and do, if you want the officers, the politicians to get in, you have to understand them, understand their needs. I started off my initial conversation with the line, what's in it for me? Because that's the reality, we're human beings. What's in it for me? What's in it for them? Do you understand what their needs are? If you understand what their needs, if you take the time to learn and understand what their needs are, then you can find a way to help fulfill some of the needs. Instinctively, the natural reaction is, if you've helped me, I'm going to help you. It takes two hands to have whatever that phrase is about, washing hands. But the key thing is, you have to help somebody, and when you help them, they will help you back. You build that relationship. So whether it's a politician, whether it's the average guy or the business owner, learn about what they're doing. Then share what you are bringing to the table and share how it's going to benefit them. And then you probably have a better chance of being able to build a stronger relationship. So.
Well, I just want to add, it's very important, like we all stated, the diaspora is very diverse, multifaceted. So cultural understanding is very key to moving that relationship forward. Investing. A lot of us, either know grants, we know, we may be angel investors or no angel investors or VCs that can actually invest in these businesses. And if you're investing in a business and then you're telling the business owner, there's this bigger opportunity across the continent in Accra, then they're like, okay, because you're putting your money where your mouth is. So I think that that's really important too as well.
Do you feel that other sectors, healthcare, fashion, entertainment, can be transported back to the continent to drive economic growth? I know that's an area we try to separate, but what's your thoughts on that? Anyone can jump in.
Well, I always say entertainment is probably one of Africa's biggest export. And right now, Afrobeats is just, it's all over the place. And a lot of collaborations are happening. A lot of African artists are getting the recognition here in the U.S. that they've tried so hard to get. Most of us that have been here for a while know that, it's only now that you can really turn on an urban radio station and hear African music on there, and it's been really hard to cross over, and that's especially because of a lot of the African American audience weren't so receptive to the music, and they controlled the radio station, the urban radio stations, because the urban radio stations are the only ones that are going to allow that. So now that's changing because of a lot of the collaborations. And so, and the same thing with fashion, now everyone, it's cool to wear, African attire. Before, people would clown you. People that went to high school would, remember being called African booty scratchers, and even continued on in college. So now, and that's because people are understanding that, Africa isn't just what the media was showing in the past. And also the media, too, is trying to show a different side of Africa, or trying to show all of Africa, because obviously we do have things that we need to work on as well.
Well, I'll go again with the premise of what was shared. Exchange of data, exchange of information, more communication, more enlightening things. I enjoyed the idea of the exchange. Yesterday I was driving down the freeway and I happened to hear Davido on the V100 FM, which is a urban station. And for a second I thought maybe that was my own thing that was playing, but then I saw the station that this is really the station. And it's uplifting to see that come on the radio, to hear that. Can we do exporting and importing of our ideas? Yes, we can. We have a lot to offer each other. There are lots of skills. Part of why we're talking about diaspora and going back home is because we're supposed to be, I use the word supposed to be, taking some of the things we've learned here in the West and taking it back there to ease processes. Not because they don't see those things or they can't learn it. The point is that we can help make things a bit faster because we've been entrenched in it for a period of time. So we can bring those ideas in there. We find ways to help them improve certain things, some processes. Nollywood, biggest movie production in the continent of Africa. But there's still flaws. There are things we can take from here to help improve the way things are done in there. There was a young lady that was talking to me earlier today. She was one of the speakers, and she was talking about using the technology to create not just movies, but other things. So yes, there are ideas that we can take in there to build up those businesses and also export them. Actually, many of us, I'm still angry that I can't get any African TV channel in Milwaukee. I'm still trying to find out how to get those things in there. But there's some of my friends that get those things through the satellite broadcast and stuff like that. We have a lot to bring in, and we have a lot we can take down there to fine-tune and improve. So there's nothing we can't take back home, nothing at all that we can't take back home. The beauty of it is you're not reinventing the wheel. You're taking ideas there to enhance things that are already in place.
Fantastic. That's good. Duly noted. Before we wrap up here, if this is just an open question, if you had to give marching orders in terms of talking to our local communities in our home, whether Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, and say, hey, listen, you play a role in this, and why, what would you say?
So we do this actually every day. So in February, for Black History Month, we hosted an event with the University of Chicago, and it was called Celebrating Diversity in the Global African Diaspora. There were over 20 different communities that was represented. And one of the communities that was represented that we don't see or hear enough from is Afro-Latino communities, right? So we had Afro-Panamanians, Afro-Colombians, Afro-Brazilians just showing up and celebrating with a very large Nigerian community, Ghanaian community, Black Americans, people who identify wherever they are in the diaspora. And I think we have to do more of intentional engagement. So what we do every day is say, who have you introduced yourself to in the diaspora that does not have your background? And how have you helped informed, what they do in the future? And that has to be intentional from us from a humanity perspective, not just from a business perspective. You have to be able to look at somebody and say, I think you need to be in the room and I think you need to be on this journey with me because you're my brother and my sister. And if we make money along the way, that's awesome. But being intentional about engaging each other around this, and I think people will be more fluid in wanting to go. They won't be feeling like they're forced to do it because it'll be very organic. It'll be very natural because you genuinely care about that person and that individual. And just because you have African ancestry, I already feel a kinship. And that's how we have to look at it, whether we're here or on the continent, not getting caught up, even in tribalism in America, because sometimes that can happen. We can stick within our own communities. I know for Chicago, which is a very historically segregated city, when African immigrants would come in, they would be pushed to the north side. Right. Like they were told to stay away from Black Americans on the south side. So even now, majority of African immigrants, first and second gen, live on the north side. It's just recently that you start seeing, like in my community, I live in a community called Bronzeville, historically black, where now you have Hyde Parkers, that are coming in, African immigrants that are coming in. You have in Washington Park, those areas. But the way Chicago was set up, keep those African immigrants away from them black folks over there. So we have to consistently remind people, come to the South Side, come to the West Side, see where you are. Don't listen to the folks that told you don't come over here. Why do you think they told you that? Why? Because they don't want that unification that happens when black folk get together globally. And so we have to just continue the education, continue the organic, intentional relationship building. Don't always look for how you can get something out of it. How can you just extend a hand and be, kind to your brother or sister? Because you never know what they're going through, whether on this side of the world or on the other side of the world.
Fantastic.
Well, I'm not the most. There's a phrase in America they call political correctness. I'm not PC, and so my methodology is by hook or crook. I'm going to get you there. You have to go home. Africa is your home. Because sometimes, when you go about it the nice way, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, because you don't know the different things that are going on behind the scenes with people. Right now, in November, I'm taking a delegation of 12 people to Nigeria. I'm using a different platform. The immediate past district governor for Rotary International, and the first black one in Wisconsin in 100 years of existence. And I saw that as an opportunity for me to help get more minorities that look like me to explore. Because to them, Africa is what they've seen on TV. I've been here long enough to see what they see on TV. So I can't be mad at them. Initially, when I first came, I was initially thinking, why do they think this way? But after watching TV long enough, I realized, gee, if this is all I've learned about Africa, of course I'm going to think the same way. But the only way for me to change that, besides my narratives and stories and my Googling of things for them, is to take them. If they go with me as a part of my delegation to visit different parts of the country and see things, then they get first-hand experience. Then they become my own ambassadors back here. Because when they come back, they spread the word. Now more people want to go. So if it means my having to even pay out of pocket to help offset the cost of somebody's trip, so be it. We have to make it happen. Some of them don't have the options of being able to afford it. How do we go about helping to get people across? Because that's when they see the real deal. They understand that there's more to Africa than the little kid standing on a dumpster with flies around their head, donate $1 a day kind of thing. How many times have you that are African that stay here have been asked about how you learned to speak English? But again, it's not the fault of the people asking you those questions, because it's what they've been force-fed. So we need to change that, and we have to help to change that, even if it's going to be at some cost to us. They are our brothers and sisters. And if we start to look at it as in that there's the so-called generational divide, it's just it's a mental thing. Let's come back together. Let's find a way to bridge that gap. Let's go together. Let's go see what things. Business is there. Relationships are there to build. Gee, I have some brothers in there who can make do with some beautiful sisters out in here. I mean, seriously, there are lots of things we can do. We have to stop thinking in a box kind of thing. We have to think on a broader picture of, let's reestablish these relationships. Let's reconnect. And once we reconnect everything, things start to change. Then we won't be having the Nigerian community in one side or some African American community here. We become one. Like I said, my barbershop, we have had to have discussions. They don't see me as a Nigerian guy. They see their brother.
All right.
So in 2011, I got DNA tested. And part of the reason, and not just myself, I forced my entire family, and I'm laughing because they're watching this, to do it. Ended up now getting more than 15 family members get tested. And so in doing so, matching a lot of people of African descent, both here in the U.S. and the Caribbean, and then they're able to see Africa now turns into, it's not, okay, well, I think this is where my ancestors came from, but I know this is where my ancestors came from because they see me. And somewhere, if you go back 6, 7 generations, we had the same ancestor. So now they're able to relate to Africa in terms of me. They give me the audience. I'm able to redirect them in terms of trying to give them the information they need concerning the continent, trying to inform them. And so a lot of them now has gone, I give them business advice, I give them career advice, and we're discussing about plans and opportunity. And so that's, and I think that once we are able to relate to people individually, then we can, one person changes a community. And so you change one person, they go back and they change their community. And so that's what's happening. So most of the people I'm talking to are going back to their family members. And now all of a sudden, we have hundreds of people that want to come to Nigeria, want to, take a tour around the continent. And so, and a lot of them too, because, so I always, I was telling people, I'm like, people talk about the Chinese are taking over the continent. But no, they're smart enough to see where the opportunities are. And when we show them the money that can be made, a lot of people, we have a lot, like you said, a lot of Black female entrepreneurs are here and hungry to go and start businesses, hungry to expand their businesses. We have, Black women in hair care and products, and now all of a sudden, African ingredients are, just wanted by African American women here. I remember a couple years ago, I used to be part of a hair care forum, and a lot of the women wanted palm kernel oil. And I remember saying, whoa, wow, because but then again, that was something that people like my grandmother, my great-grandmother used. But then now, all of a sudden here, people are sending me messages asking me if I knew how to get it for them. So that was a business opportunity, which I started to do. I actually ordered it, but I just got too busy with other stuff, and people wanted it then. But, there are a lot of opportunities, and just, so I just encourage everyone to go out there, reestablish relationships and make new relationships. Even here, a lot of business deals have been taking place. People are all over the place, and I'm like, this environment is just it's a ripe ground for us to, we've sown the seed, the seeds are going to bear fruit if we do what we need to do, which is toil the ground, pour the water, and it will grow. And then once it grows, the fruit will be ready and we can pass it on.
All right. Well, you have heard from the experts. Thank you very much. And thank our panelists. Let's clap for our panelists. Thank you so much.